We bring in Rabbi Orlofsky. And just tell us that it's okay when you're applying your Emunah, you need a little humor too. Rabbi Orlofsky.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Bader. As Rabbi pointed out, you've heard a lot of speakers that make you think about life and are very deep and intellectual, and then they brought me in. So I guess that says a lot right there about what we can expect during our time together. First of all, I want to apologize for being late. I thought 45 minutes would be enough time to get here, but apparently there's tremendous traffic throughout the streets of Yerushalayim. There's tremendous construction going on, which is really what we daven for, that Yerushalayim should be rebuilt, and they're building everywhere. And it's going to be really, really nice when they finish in 40 years to get around Yerushalayim much easier. So in the meantime, of course, it is a little bit of a challenge, so I apologize for that. And as Rabbi pointed out, we're usually in Matan, which is much easier to get to and also to park. And so it took me a little while to be able to get here, but what a thrill to be here. And a special Yasher Koyach to everybody. I'm sure you must have heard this many times, but to be able to come and look at a full base medrash in Yerushalayim in a year when you knew you were going to come during COVID, and you knew up front they were going to lock you down. Now in Nativ they always do that, but usually you don't know, so now you knew up front they were going to lock you down, and then you have to get through missile attacks and riots, all around you and all kinds of crazy things. Usually the guys in Nativ have to go to town to get riots, and so here we brought them directly to you, and luckily there was a lockdown so you couldn't tell. But so it's really a really challenging experience. So I want to try, if I can, at the end to deal with what is probably the most important question of all, right? And that is our Emunah. That's what it really comes down to. I mean, gosh, have we not been challenged this year in particular? Thing after thing after thing. You can hardly catch your breath before the next, we can't say tragedy. A challenge comes our way, all kinds of things that are coming up. It's just really frightening after a while. You don't know where to turn and what to do. So we got to return to basics. I want to start off with a little shot from Rav Dessler. Rav Dessler points out that the Greeks were the greatest intellectuals really in the history of mankind. And to a certain extent, it would seem that they challenged the Jewish people themselves to up our game. Because while there was Nevuah, how do you know that it's true? You know that it's true. You know something is true because it's true. Right? I'm sure you all learned this at some point. How do you know that you exist? Maybe you're just a character in somebody else's dream. And you don't really exist. You're just a small person in a little dream of somebody else, or somebody else's play. How do you know that you exist? So Descartes gave the famous answer, I think, therefore I am. But if you need that to get out of bed in the morning, there's something seriously wrong with you, right? You wake up in the morning and say, another day. Wait, maybe I don't exist. Oh, I think therefore I am Ashkoyach. Okay, now I'll get out, right? So then you're totally out of touch with reality. How do you know you exist? You know you exist because you exist. And even if somebody would prove to you that you don't exist, you still know that you exist, right? It doesn't help. It's just a fiction, right? So the knowing whether or not you exist, right? So the Greeks, well, we had Nevuah, we didn't have a problem. We knew everything was true. Came along the Greeks, and they started challenging us. How do you know this? How do you know that? Maybe it's science. Maybe, as Aristotle says, the universe always existed. It was, is, and will be. That was basically the position of science for many, many, many decades and centuries and millennia. Right? The majority of the scientific community rejected the Big Bang because it basically said that the world had a beginning. And they don't want to believe that. They want to believe the world always was, like Aristotle said. This was the, Rabbi Shapiro pointed out once, that Yavon begematria is Galgal. That everything just spins, everything was always there. And so that was most of the time. The Greeks really challenged us, and we had no choice. So says Rav Dessler, these people are so smart, how could they not figure out there's a God? Right? There's definitely enough evidence out there. And so he said, Because I don't want to hear the answer. That's how it works. In other words, if there's a God, then I'm obligated. If there is no God, I can do whatever I want. A nice Christian lady said to me once and said, "You're a Jew, right?" And I said, "Yes." What gave it away? You know? Oh yeah, the Pope has a white one. Yeah? Okay. Yes, I am a Jew. Yes. You know, God gave the Bible to the Jews at Mount Sinai. I said, yes, that's correct. He says, how come when I meet Jews, none of them believe it? I said, because if you believe it, you can still do whatever you want on Saturday and you can eat pork. If we believe it, then our whole life changes. So I'm just not sure. There's just not enough evidence to convince me. And so therefore, this is a challenge that we have to face all the time. People say, how do I know? How do I know there's a God? How do I know there's a God? Right? I used to run the Long Island region of NCSY. And that was about years ago. But I gave it out that I have a kid, right? 9th, 10th grade, 14, 15 years old. And he'd say to me, I'm an atheist. An atheist, not even an agnostic. You understand? I'm an atheist. That means I know there's no God. I'm sure I've examined everything, the entire universe, there's no God. I said, that's interesting. Did you ever read classical philosophy? Aristotle, Plato? No. Medieval philosophy, Thomas Aquinas, no. Modern philosophy, Spinoza, Nietzsche, Heidegger, Hegel, no. Jewish philosophy, Maimonides, Yehuda Levi, no. Did you ever study the Talmud? No. Did you ever read the Bible? Not the whole thing, parts of it. One guy read the review notes on the Old Testament. That was how much he knew. I said, then you'll forgive me. You're not an atheist, you're an idiot. How'd you develop your theology? Looking out the school bus on the way one day? Is there a God? Nope. In fact, I'm positive. You're not the first guy to ask the question. There could be some evidence out there, many intelligent people, but you haven't even looked at it and you've come to a conclusion? Nobody would do this in any other instance. Rabbi Refson, the founder of Nevei Yerushalayim, was at a science and religion conference, and a famous astronomer got up to speak, and he said, I don't really know anything about religion, but I think it should be summed up as love thy neighbor as thyself, and do unto others, do unto you, and thank you very much. And he sits down. Rabbi Refson gets up and he says, I don't know much about astronomy, but I think it can be summed up as twinkle, twinkle, little star. He says, you're a man of science. You stand up and say, I don't know anything about a subject, but this is what it means? But that's what happens. Every kid knows this. All you have to do is, if you don't want to learn today, back in high school, here, of course, you're here, so there's no choice, because, that we're not above acts of violence. But, if you want to, and you're like, I don't know if I believe in God. And everyone goes, ooh, And then that's it. All you have to do is say. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to bring any evidence, any proof. Nobody would walk into, convention of famous physicists, and say, I think Einstein's theory of relativity is wrong. They were like, really? He says, yeah, I have relatives, they're never on time. He says, okay, why don't you go outside to the refreshment area, and thanks for coming, No one's going to pay attention to your opinion. But when it comes to this, anybody who says, I'm an atheist, But where is the insight? Where is the idea? So, I've had conversations with atheists over the years, at least people who pretend to be atheists. So I always say, oh, atheist, that means there's no God. He goes, yeah, prove it to me. Well, why do bad things happen? I said, that doesn't prove that God doesn't exist, that just proves you don't like him. Right? If your mom says, clean up your room, and you say, I'll tell you what the problem is, Mom, I don't know if you exist. And she gives you a smack, and you say, now I know you don't exist, because if I had a mother, she would never hit me. I mean? The fact that someone does something you don't like doesn't prove their non-existence. So here's the other one, absolutely brilliant. I can't even believe that so many intelligent people give this. Can God make a rock so heavy that he can't lift it? If he can, then there's something he can't do. He can't lift the rock. And if he can't, then there's something he can't do. He can't make a rock so heavy that he can't lift it. And I say, that is probably the stupidest question I've ever heard. I can't believe that people spend any time on this. The question, you just played a game. The question is, can God be so all-powerful that he's not all-powerful? Can God be so all-powerful that he can become not all-powerful? No, he's so all-powerful that he's all-powerful. And he can't not be all-powerful. So the question is ridiculous. The major response I hear to this is, let me think about it. Yeah? Or they'll come back with, can God make a square circle? I say, okay, you're just asking stupid questions now. It's just ridiculous. Can God be so tall that he's short? Can God be so heavy that he's thin? I mean, it's just ridiculous questions, you know? So those don't make any sense. But it's an interesting thing, yeah? Because people say the following. I don't believe the whole Bible story. If there's really a God, let him split the Red Sea in my backyard. I said, I think you flatter yourself. Your backyard's not that big. You know what I'm saying? So you want him to do like, in Bruce Almighty and split a glass of water. I mean, what exactly do you expect over here? And the Ramban says already that God did all of his miracles at Yetzias Mitzrayim, and he says, if you're interested, go look over there, but I'm not doing miracles every day. Otherwise, they're not miracles, right? But people say that, show me a miracle, and I'll become religious. I've heard this so many times. And I used to try to respond to it, and now I realize for a fact it's not true. I'm going to take you back to ancient history. Yeah? Before most of you were born, I assume. Yeah? I moved to Israel in 1988. My mother still calls it my running away from home. And I wanted to become part of the Jewish experience. Originally, I came because I thought I was going to learn for a few years and then become, like a synagogue rabbi, and then I decided that there wasn't enough money to pay me to do that. So I decided I was going to stay. And in 1991, there was a series of events that took place. Now, George Bush the Elder, who just passed away not that long ago, he was president of the United States. And Iraq invaded the Arab country of Kuwait in order to destroy Israel. Now, we're not sure how that was supposed to work, but in general, we're okay with that. You understand? You guys want to kill each other, we're okay. When Yitzhak Shamir was prime minister, the Iran-Iraq war had been going on for 8 years. And somebody asked him, what is your position? And he said, we wish both sides luck. Hope they're both successful. We don't really care. You want to kill each other, it's fine. So Iraq invades Kuwait. We don't really care. We don't really care. But George Bush, realizing the potential for rising up in the polls, decided that he was going to issue an ultimatum. And so he got on television and said, if Saddam Hussein does not withdraw from Kuwait, we will be forced to use military action. So Saddam said, he doesn't even know how to pronounce my name. I don't think he knows where Iraq is. I'll call his bluff. He says, we're not gonna do anything. And then to win support, he took all the Westerners and tied them to military installations. Always a good way to win international support. He was the perfect villain. He had the little mustache, and he had the little beret, and he was like right out of Mission Impossible. He was the perfect villain, And he went on TV with this little kid, and he was like yelling at him. The little kid was crying. I mean, wow, was he able to get international support? So George Bush was like, I can't lose this. I mean, even I can't mess this up, So he put together the largest coalition probably in world history. Yeah, he got Russia and China to join. Yeah, he got Syria and Israel to join. He got Germany and England to join. They've had some difficulties over the years. Yeah, he got Eastern Europe, Western Europe, South America, Africa. Everybody was on board except for Yemen, who went on with Iraq. And I'm sure that was Iraq's ace in the hole, because Yemen promised to send both camels. So, so he gets on and he says, if you attack me, I'm going to bomb Israel. And the whole world was like, I dare you. And we were like, hey, keep Kuwait. We weren't using it anyway. You know what I mean? Like, just leave us out of this. He says, no, you attack me. I'm going to bomb Israel. And I have Scud missiles with chemical warheads. Now, no one had ever heard of a Scud missile before. The best part about it is its name, because it sounds like the Scuzzy missile. And you figure it's like black with a shark's face on it. It's got coming to get you, Now, this was in the summer, and he set a deadline of January 15th. We didn't really care what was going to happen. We Israelis are getting threatened with destruction all the time, My brother called me up in a panic. He says, "What's going on over there?" I said, "Missile attack. Been there, done that." It's like we go through this all the time. What can I tell you? My daughter, who is on social media, is looking at all these videos of everybody who hates us. And she was like, "Why are these people doing it? Why would they say Israel can't defend themselves?" I said, "Because people don't like us." Have you been a student of history? This didn't start yesterday. People have never liked us. There's something about us. As Tom Lehrer, who was a professor of mathematics in Harvard University, who is best known for writing funny songs, wrote a song called National Brotherhood Week, and he said, the Protestants hate the Catholics, and the Catholics hate the Protestants, and the Hindus hate the Muslims, and everybody hates the Jews. It's the only thing everyone can agree on. It's international. Elders of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion was a bestseller in Japan. There weren't even any Jews there. People just love to hate us. Some people ask Jews to move in so they could do anti-Semitic acts. It's real hard to do it without any Jews. So they just don't like us. We're kind of used to this. But so they're gonna bomb us. Oh, who cares? It's January. It's July, right? Okay. Comes October, it's getting closer. So my daughter comes home from school. She was in first grade, second grade, and she says to my wife, "It was so funny today, we dressed up like foxes." So my wife turns white. She says, "You hear that? They dressed up like foxes." I said, "So what? I played a tree in the Tu B'Shvat play. I mean, what are you worried about?" He says, "Explain to Abba how you look like a fox." He goes, "Oh, we put this funny black mask on with a long nose." She says, "Gas masks. They're wearing gas masks. Aren't you nervous?" I said, "No, they don't teach them anything else in school besides dikduk. How could a person learn dikduk for 12 years? How much is there? You know what I mean? And all Israelis just speak English with a bad accent anyway. They just take all the English words and add an itzi at the end, and then they pretend that it's Hebrew." I said, "Why do you people even waste your time with a language? Just switch to English." And this Israeli said to me, "Ani optimisti." I said, "Okay." You just don't get it, do you? Anyway, but fine. So they're practicing putting on gas masks. Why should I care? Now comes November, and we're starting to get nervous. Remember, January 15th is the deadline. So they start distributing poison gas equipment, right? So, okay, we gather up all the family. We go down for a typical Yerushalayim evening, pizza and gas masks, and we all line up. And if you don't know this yet, Israeli bureaucracy is unbelievably effective. If you don't come back 3 times, then the Pakid is not doing their job. It's very important. I used to go to the Misrat Panim, and I used to bring a sleeping bag and food, and because you knew you were going to be there for several days. It was, it's just an amazing experience. It doesn't matter what documents you bring. It's like, do you have your reading scores from the 3rd grade? Right here. Dental records? Yep. Bring me the witch's broomstick. Forget it. No matter what you do. So I go in there, and they look at something, and there's something in my Teudat Zehut that they don't think is up to date. It says, "Sorry." Now, okay, I've been living, by then, 1991, I've been living here 3 years. I figured out how things work, right? I learned this when I tried to open a bank account. When you go to America, you open a bank account, they're so happy to see you. I would go see Miss Williams, Okay, thank you so much for opening. What type of checks would you like? We have mountain scenes. We have beach scenes. What number would you like your check to start at? Would you like a check case? We have leather. We have elephant hide. We have, pick it out. Oh, and by the way, here's a toaster. Thank you very much. So I come to Israel. I say, I want to open an account. Says, go to him. So the guy who's smoking under the no smoking sign, drinking a coffee, reading the paper. And I said, Ani rotzeh leftoach cheshbon. He goes, Ze lo po. Okay, so I go downstairs, and they send me from person to person to person. An hour and a half I'm walking around. Turns out it is him. He just couldn't be bothered. So I get back online. There's 3 people in front of me. And of course, everyone, one of the secrets to the Israeli economy is we close everything down between 1 and 4 so everyone go home and take a nap. Very important. You'll find in the finest economies, this is what they do. Go home, eat a schnitzel, come back at 4 o'clock. Yeah? So anyways, I'm online. It's about 12:30. And the guy looks at me and says, Ma rotzeh? I said, Ani rotzeh leftoach cheshbon. Can't do it now, come back in the afternoon. And I paused for a moment, being the dumb American that I am. And then I remembered, I used to run junior NCSY. I know how to deal with people like this. And I said in my loudest, meanest voice, Ani rotzeh laftoch cheshbon. And he said, Beseder. So I figured out how it works. That's how it works in this country, you know? By the Sephardim, it's very important that they have a boy. More so perhaps than Ashkenazim, because, you know, we're kind of weak people, and, you know, Sephardim need a son to sit next to them in shul to chant. We Ashkenazim can't handle that much chanting. Sephardim love to chant. By now Ashkenazim are already up to Shemona Esrei, and they're still chanting away, you know what I mean? So, and they're always doing hand motions and this and that, and they're doing stuff, you know? So to them it's important. A friend of mine who's a Sephardi, I said this to him once, and he goes, that's not true. You know, my father always says, Lo chashuv ben o bat, ha'ikar sheyeh brit. You know what I mean? As long as you make a bris, I don't care what it is. You know what I mean? So, fine. So this guy, this Sephardi guy has 4 kids, 4 girls, and he's waiting, and his wife gives birth, and the nurse comes out and says, congratulations, you have a baby girl. He goes, what? I have to name for my father? This can't be. I'm not going to put up with this. And he starts screaming and yelling. She goes to the back. She comes back and she says, I made a mistake. It's a son. I said, you don't get anything in this country unless you yell. So they say to me, no, so I start screaming, because that's what you do. You know, I said, fine, don't give us any masks. We'll all die. Missile attack. We'll all die of poison gas. All of us will die. It'll be on your head. My son was like 5. He goes, we're going to die? I said, no, this is Israel. You had to do this. This is just how it works. So I start screaming, and she goes, okay, no problem, yeah. So they give us 3 adult gas masks, 2 children's gas masks, and a gas crib, a mamad. If you haven't seen this, this is really very strange. It's this rectangular thing made out of plastic. You roll it up, stick the baby in, and roll it back up. I said, can he breathe in there? They said, we think so. And don't worry, inside there's a little glove, because there's an anti-nerve gas shot inside with the kid. What could go wrong? You know what I mean? And so you could reach in and just, you know, give him a little shot of nerve gas, you know? So, I'm starting to get a little concerned. Just before I went to get my gas masks, my mother called, one of many phone calls, and she said, that's it, come home. I was 30 years old. I was a rabbi, a speaker of some renown. I was like, come on, Mom, can't I stay a little longer? No, you take my grandchildren and come home right now. I said, Mom, there's nothing to worry about. Yeah? The spokesman for the Israeli army came on, you know, and they had a big map of Iraq, and they said, all of the missiles are in these 2 sections, H2 and H3. I remember thinking to myself that maybe we shouldn't tell the Iraqis that we know where they are, because they might move some of the missiles to H1 or H4, you know what I mean? If I saw the map in the Jerusalem Post. But I guess Saddam didn't get the Jerusalem Post, so there was nothing to worry about, you know? So I'm getting my gas masks in a little gas crib, and I said, you know, is there anything to worry about? He goes, don't worry about it, because first of all, we know where all the missiles are. They're in H2 and H3. And don't mention this to any Iraqis that you meet. And we'll blow them all up right away. And even if one of them should get through, you don't have to worry, because put a piece of plastic over your window. And this way, if your window breaks, it'll keep the poison gas from coming in. I said, really? No. But take a towel and soak it in water and baking soda and put it under the door, and some masking tape. That should do it. I said, you think there's any pill to keep out the poison gas? Not really, but we got to give people something to do. Besides, you live in Har Nof. You know, it's all mountains here. The gas is heavy. It sinks to the bottom of the hill. I said, I live at the bottom of the hill. So maybe put on an extra sheet of plastic, just to be on the safe side. So now I get another call from my mother, yeah? She says, okay, come home now. I said, why? Because they're giving out poison gas equipment. Aren't you nervous? I said, shouldn't I be nervous if they weren't giving out poison gas equipment? She didn't know what to do with that one. That threw her off, you know? So it's getting closer. Now it's January. Yeah, people are really getting nervous, you know? How do you know when an Israeli is getting nervous? You can always tell. If they ever announce it's going to snow, right away Israelis buy up all the bread and the tomatoes. I don't know why. In any national crisis, evidently you need bread and tomatoes. You know, these are the two most Israeli staples. You can get by without cucumbers, but not without tomatoes. This is very important. And bread. And in fact, I one time, a guy says to me, he says, watch this. And he says to me in Hebrew, he goes, I heard there's going to be a tomato shortage. And everyone in the place goes, and they go run to the tomatoes and buy them up, you know what I mean? It was a beautiful moment. I think he works for the Tomato Growers Society. But yeah, so it's getting closer. And people are starting to get nervous. January 15th is the deadline. Saddam Hussein shows no indication that he's giving up, right? So we have to have some reassurances. So General Ben Nun, who is the head of the Air Force, the typical Israeli spokesperson. Do you ever see when these people go on camera? I don't know what they're thinking, you know what I mean? The big, giant guy with 20 medals, his shirt's open, big hairy chest, cigarette dangling from his mouth, an Arab under his arm, you know? And we wonder why we don't get international support. When I first came, you know, I was 27, so you know, you're supposed to get called up in 3 years. They never called me up. You get 3 years then when you're in Ole, and you know, they didn't do it. So I go down to the Misrad Giyus, and I said, I came, you know, to be drafted. Well, they had a good laugh over that, and they said, please go home. And I said, no, I want to serve my country. They said, sir, you have the military profile of a terrorist victim. Why don't you go home and try not to hurt yourself walking out because, you know, people are busy here, you know. I said, but I can do something for you that nobody else can do. This is, what's that? Make me a military spokesman. Put me in a uniform and let me talk, and people will be so afraid for the Jewish people. Look at those poor people. And I'll be like, they had rocks that were thrown at us. It was so scary. And I was like, oh my God, those poor Jews. You know what I mean? I said, you put a guy like Ben Nun up there, and you wonder why everybody hates us, you know? Anyway, he's standing with 4 of his guys, you know, like this behind him, in front of some F-16s, and he says, if Saddam tries anything, we will blow Baghdad out of the sky. And they all go. And that was very reassuring. I felt better. But now it's already January 13th. And somebody asked Shlomo Zalman Auerbach what's going to be. He says, I'm not a Navi, but I promise you the following. On January 15th is the deadline. On January 16th, all of Klal Yisrael is going to say Hallel. And this year we're going to eat meat on Tisha B'Av. And it spread like wildfire. Shlomo Zalman said, must be Mashiach's coming. Then somebody realized that January 16th was Rosh Chodesh. We always say Hallel. And that year, Tisha B'Av came out on Shabbos. But otherwise, guess Rosh Chodesh having a little fun at our expense. Anyway. So, fine. Comes January 15th, and the war starts, right? And I know this because relatives in America called me up, and they said they started to bomb Iraq, the war started, you know, everything's going on. I was like, wow. So I turn on the radio, and they say, open up your protective equipment, don't put anything on yet, everything's fine. And as the night progressed, they announced all of the missiles were blown up, all the Scud missiles, they're all in H2 and H3. We knew where they all were, and the war is over. Fine, great. Next night was Thursday night. About 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up. I see you paying attention. That's right, it was Rosh Chodesh. Excellent. Give that guy an extra ice cream. Anyway, so it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. I wake up my wife and I said, I think I hear a siren. Now, that should not be an opinion question. Did you ever see these movies with the sirens? I think I hear, my wife wakes me up. I'm sorry, of course I didn't wake up. My mother always said I could sleep through a missile attack. Anyway, so my wife says, I think I hear a siren. So, by the way, it's because I live in Harnof and the guy in charge fell asleep. Okay, what do you want? He was tired. So we were actually hearing the siren from Beit Zayit. So I stick my head out the window and I said, no, it's an ambulance, go back to sleep. She says, it might be a missile attack. I don't know if you can appreciate how surrealistic this is. I might be under missile attack. So I turn on the radio. Now, they didn't put it on anybody special. Who do you expect to find on the radio at 2 o'clock in the morning? The disc jockey, Dr. Love. Shalom. Yesh azaka. Holech l'cheda atum. And put on your gas masks. V'achshav musica. And they start playing music. I wish I was exaggerating on anything. Ask anybody who was there. No, I wasn't paying that much attention. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, you know? So I said, no, it's, there's nothing, they're playing music. My wife said, they said, there's a missile attack, you know? So I said, they don't announce that in between songs. So I'm standing there waiting until the song finishes, and he goes, I hope you're all in your sealed rooms with your gas masks, and now more music for the sealed room. I was like, oh my gosh, this can't really be happening. Now, I'm a news junkie. When I was in New York, I used to listen to WCBS News Radio 88 all the time. And there was only 4 stories, and they repeated them over and over and over again, but you kept listening because you didn't want to miss anything. And they always made it sound so dramatic, you know. There's a fire in the Bronx. We turn to our correspondent, in the Bronx. This fire has ripped through a 3-story building with a 3-alarm fire. There are a number of people. Yeah. We turn to the fire chief and that. And now we turn to one of the residents, and we turn back to that. And it's so exciting, right? So exciting. It was a fire, yeah. And it's very exciting. So could you imagine if New York was under missile attack? They would bring Edward R. Murrow back from the dead. You know what I mean? This would be the biggest story. New York is on a missile attack. Yeah? So Dr. Love is announcing there's a missile attack. So, of course, we do what anybody would do. We go into panic mode. And I was like, oh, my gosh. Let's wake up the children and take them into the sealed room. Now, the children were very excited because we had bought Bisley and Bumba. We put it in the sealed room, and I said, you can't have it till the war. You understand? So they were really hoping for a war. You know what I mean? So I bring everybody in, and people put on their gas masks. I put the baby in a little gas crib. Mommy, shot, go ahead, stay in there, you know. I don't want to have to give you the nerve gas shot, you know what I mean? And we wrap everybody up, and my wife puts on her mask, and she says, I can't breathe. I said, you're doing it wrong, give it to me. And I put it on, and you can't breathe. Because evidently, they forgot to remove the little plastic disc from the air hole on a number of these masks, yeah? We bought them from Germany. If you think about it, they're the wrong people to buy poison gas protective equipment from. I'm just saying. Anyway, so I said, no, I didn't know what was wrong with it. I said, no, give it to me. And I put it on. And I left it on loose because I had a beard. And they said, unless you shave your beard, it's not going to work anyway. And I figured I know what I look like without a beard, and I'd rather die. So I grew a beard at 16. I have not shaven it off since, nor do I have any intention to, because I know what's under there. Anyway, so in fact, I had a friend of mine, his Rabbi told him, you have to shave your beard. Yeah, he shaved his beard, you know, and he went through the missile attack. When it was over, he called up his Rabbi, you know, and the Rebbetzin answered the phone and said, how's everybody? He says, everybody's fine. You know, he goes, did Rebbe shave off his beard? He says, no. He says, he told me to. Let me talk to him. He says, just wait a minute. In the background you hear, ah! He says, what happened? He said, he covered it over with electrical tape. That's gotta hurt. Anyways, I'm sitting there with my mask half on, you know what I mean? And we're stuck in this room. They're playing this maudlin music, you know? The children are trying to stick the Bisley through the air holes in their masks, you know? And there's nothing there. And so finally, they interview the spokesperson for the war, Nachman Shai. Now, Nachman Shai had evidently died several years earlier, and no one had the heart to tell him. He had no discernible personality whatsoever. So Dr. Love is interviewing Nachman Shai. He goes, Nachman, אפשר לצאת, להסיר את המסכות? He says, don't leave the room and don't take off the masks. He says, can you tell us anything? We're looking for the Scud missiles. Now I thought to myself, a Scud missile is 4 stories tall, travels 700 miles an hour with a possible chemical payload. How hard could they be to find? Are they going door to door? Any Scud missiles here? No? Okay. So I said, oh my gosh, I know what's going to happen. I've seen this scene 100 times. It's going to crash through my wall and stand there ticking. And I have to disarm it. And I always try to remember, do you cut the red wire or the blue wire? I never pay attention during those scenes. Oh my gosh, what do I do, you know? So we're going crazy, there's no news. So back then, in the middle of the night, you used to be able to get Voice of America. So I figure, oh, we'll turn to Voice of America. I turned the voice, dun, 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 this is the Voice of America. I said, okay, great. Welcome to Gulf War headquarters. We turn now to our correspondent in Saudi Arabia. He says, I'm here with British pilot Watkins Wilkins Harris. Watkins, what can you tell us? Well, we're just doing our job. And what is that job? Well, we're bombing Iraq. And how's it going? Quite well, thank you. Would you like to say anything to people back home? Thank goodness the Red Cross gives us coffee and donuts. Wonderful. And now we turn back to Washington. President Bush is standing by waiting to make an announcement as soon as we have more information. I say, okay, I know where I am now, And now we turn to our correspondent in Jerusalem. This is exactly how the conversation went. And he goes, we're here in Jerusalem, we're wearing our protective equipment, and we're in our sealed rooms. And what is Israel News reporting? Nothing. What do you mean? They're just playing this feathery music. Listen, na 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 na. Okay, back to Saudi Arabia. Like nothing. I guess they realized maybe they shouldn't tell Saddam we knew everything about his Scud missiles, so they stopped giving the weather report after that. They were not going to tell you anything, Like you can keep anything secret in Israel, the cell phone capital of the world. Everybody has at least one, most people have two, talking on both of them at the same time. You go out to eat and you see two guys talking to each, sitting together and talking to somebody else on their cell phones, you know what I mean? I try to get the waitress, but she's on her cell phone. I got the number. Hi, could you come to table 6? We're sitting here, And news passes. So they go, again, Dudi. Which, by the way, if you want to stop Aliyah, just pass a law that every boy has to be named Dudi and every girl has to be named Osnat. Anyway, again, Dudi, אני פה top secret base. אתה מכיר אותו, Aliyah באר שבע, כן, So the news starts to spread. They didn't tell us anything. Eventually they tell us, take off your mask, come outside. We don't hear anything. But the news spreads, Ends up 9 Scud missiles hit that first night, the greater Tel Aviv area. Over 100 buildings were destroyed. Nobody was killed. In that first attack, nobody was even injured. Now, I don't know if you've realized that, but here in Yerushalayim and throughout Israel, we build with steel reinforced concrete. When that falls on you, it has been known to hurt. Sometimes cause injury. Nobody was hurt. Nothing happened. It was, you just couldn't believe it. In that first attack, one of the missiles fell on the national natural gas pipeline. It should have blown Tel Aviv off the map, but there had been a leak 2 days earlier and they shut it down. Afterwards, they said, I hope you appreciate how prepared we were for the war. You understand? They just happened to shut it down. So we went into Shabbos, everybody's half asleep because we were up all night, and people were really nervous. And you had to leave on your radios to find out if there was a siren. It was a great Shabbos. All the secular people had to stay home, all the religious people left on their radios, That Friday night, there were 3 missile attacks. I slept through 2 of them. That was good, you know what I mean? But we keep going into the sealed room, putting on your mask, going through the routine. We realize it can't go on like this, So we tell America, listen, we're going to go in because we're real good at blowing stuff up, particularly in Iraq. So if you people aren't going to do this, we'll do it ourselves. So they said, don't worry, we'll give you Patriot missile defense system. Patriot missiles. Not very effective, but it has a great name to counter the ugly Scud missile. Patriot, it's red, white, and blue with a cape. Patriot! Stop the Scud missile. Fine. Comes that Sunday, there's another attack. We send the Patriot missile, and the Patriot missile intercepts it and cuts it in half. So the warhead falls right on a building. Bam. The whole building was destroyed. Nobody was killed. The paper went around afterwards interviewing everybody. This guy was in his bedroom. He ran to the sealed room. This one went to the kids' room to get the kids. Everybody had moved someplace else. One guy said he was in the bathroom, and he heard the explosion, and he said, I'm going to die, and I have to say the Shema, and I don't know if you can say the Shema in the bathroom. And then he looked down, and there was no bathroom. Now, how he explained his situation to his rescuers, I don't know, but talk about being caught with your pants down, quite literally, So at that point, something changed in the Jewish people, and we said, they can't get us. And we would just felt like we were invulnerable. I remember hearing Nachman Shai one time saying, Kol Meshugaim b'Tel Aviv, get off of your roof and go into the house. People would watch the missiles. Oh, here comes a missile, boom! Oh, that was fun, let's go next door, see if they blow up that house. Boom! And they were blowing everything up. Nobody was getting killed. There was only one guy who died from the entire Scud missiles attack, 39 missiles. And Scud missiles are no joke. One of them fell in Saudi Arabia and killed 27 servicemen. These things were not a joke. And it was just absolutely amazing. People watched. There was this one picture in Savion. This guy's entire house collapsed. Only his neck was sticking out of the rubble. He was buried. Couldn't move. Very difficult for an Israeli because then they can't talk because they don't have their hands. I said, what's happening? They came with equipment. They removed all the rubble. He was fine. They ripped my jacket. I will get them! It was absolutely amazing. Yeah? And so this went on like this. And it was just the most amazing thing in the world. I remember hearing Yitzhak Rabin on the radio. He said, we have to recognize that these are miracles. I'll never forget this. I heard it myself. And he paused and said, and this is me talking. Yitzhak Rabin was not a religious fellow, but there was no way to explain 39 Scud missiles falling and nobody getting killed. They interviewed a woman at one point, and they said, would you say that these are miracles? And she says, no. Things like this happen in Israel all the time. I thought that was very interesting. Now, I was born in 1959. I don't remember the War of Independence. I don't remember the Sinai War. The first war I remember was the Six-Day War. I was a kid in school, fourth grade or something. And the whole country was 9 miles wide. How hard is it to capture a country 9 miles wide? Israel didn't have an army as strong as the Jordan Legion. Egypt had the largest air force in the Middle East. The Golan Heights were considered unconquerable. I read an article in a military digest once, and they said there is no way to capture the Golan Heights. And we were sure that was the end of the state of Israel. Everybody knew it. You know, today we take it for granted. Back then we didn't take it for granted. Israel hadn't been around that long. The first news reports came in. Tel Aviv is in flames. Israel's been destroyed. Everybody's overpowering it. It was mafchid. We really thought this was the end. And we weren't alone. Most of the world thought this was the end. And we won this unbelievable victory. We destroyed the Egyptian Air Force. We captured the entire Sinai to the Suez Canal. We captured all of the West Bank. We could have gone further. We didn't want to. We thought that was a good barrier. We could have gone into Egypt. We thought that was a good barrier. We took the Golan Heights. I was sitting on a bus next to one of the commanders who captured the Golan Heights. He said to me, most of our tanks were so old they couldn't make it up the slope. I said, anyone whose tank works, come with me. That's how we captured the Golan Heights. Well, they had these tremendous heights and they were bombing us. We ran up, we captured it. It was a miracle. Everyone knew it was a miracle. That was the beginning of the modern Kiruv movement. It started after the Six-Day War because everybody was amazed. This was such a clear miracle. Okay, we Israelis being who we are, the years go past and we're saying, no, it wasn't a miracle. It's because we attacked first. No question, if the Arabs attacked first and took us by surprise, we would have been destroyed. But we went in first, we blew up the Egyptian Air Force, we had certain advantages, that's why we won. Okay. So imagine a Kodesh Baruch who's listening to this and he says, all right, what happens when you're not prepared? Yom Kippur 1973. Totally unprepared. The majority of Israelis keep Yom Kippur, even the people who call themselves secular. Yeah? So there was nothing going on. Everybody was away. The Syrians came pouring down through the Golan Heights. The Egyptians came across the canal. In fact, we had built the Bar Lev line. What was clever about it was made out of sand, so it would absorb the explosions. So the Russians told them use hoses. They just washed it away. You know, they come running into Sinai. The Syrians are coming down, murdering everybody they find in their path. They come to the bridge across from Tiberia. Nothing stopping them from going in. They stop and stand there for 2 days until we counterattack. I have read at least a dozen accounts. Nobody can explain why they stopped. No one. This guy Kahalani had 3 tanks. He was standing on the top and he knocked out an entire Syrian tank corps. One by one, just pulled them off. Him and his 3 tanks. Yeah? Things were so desperate, we were down to our last bullets. Golda Meir and her cabinet were carrying cyanide pills so they could commit suicide rather than get captured. They really thought this was the end. Thought this was the end. We counterattacked. We managed to pull a victory, a very difficult, very costly, very hard. We won. So, okay, I thought the reason you won the 6-day war was because you attacked first. Now they attacked first. They had a 2-day advantage. And you still won the war. So what do you say now? So we said it was a miracle. As the years went by, we said, nope, our army is so good, we can give the Arabs a 2-day head start and we'll still beat them. So God says, okay, try this. Sit in your room with a piece of plastic between you and the missiles, and I'll shoot missiles at you, and no one will get killed, and tell me, who won that war? Poor generals are pacing up and down. We want to attack, we want to do something. Nothing. Sit in your room. To the point that everyone has to say that these are miracles. And everyone knows what happened after that. It was an open miracle. You had to recognize it. So all the Jews in Israel did tshuva, and now today it's a religious state. No. No, that's not what happened. What happened is everyone said it was a miracle, and then everybody went back to their regular lives. There was a Rosh Hashiva who, in between World War I and World War II, went to learn in Europe. He writes the story. He says he was in the baggage compartment. He couldn't afford a fancy cabin. And he brought food, and he was learning, and he was staying there by, getting by. And there was a crack in the wall where you could see into the main ballroom, and in the main ballroom, there was a costume party going on. And the band is playing, and there's tables of food, and everyone's all dressed up, and okay. All of a sudden, a wave hits the boat, and it turns on its side. He was thrown against the wall, and everybody, so he could, thrown against the wall, you could see into the hall. Everybody's now turned upside down, all the food is collapsed, the band is there, and they realize they're going to die. And everybody got down on their hands and knees and started praying to God for a miracle. Hope against hope. And a miracle happened. Because usually, waves go in one direction. A wave came from the other direction and righted the boat. Well, this was an open miracle. This is what he writes. And he says, I took out my Tehillim, I thanked the Kadosh Baruch Hu, for this unbelievable miracle, and I could only wonder how all these people's lives had changed. And he looks through the crack, and he saw that everybody gets up, kind of sheepishly. The band picks up their instruments, the kitchen brings out more food, and they brush themselves off and go on as if nothing had ever happened. Winston Churchill said, man will occasionally stumble upon the truth, but he usually picks himself up and keeps going. Yeah, miracles? If God showed me a miracle, it'll change my life. I know for a fact it's not true. So what does change anybody's life? How does a person get Emunah? Okay, Eliyahu Navi, yeah, somebody rebuilt Yericho. He wasn't supposed to rebuild Yericho. Yehoshua put a curse on it and said, your children will die. His first son died when he laid the foundation. His 10th son died when he put up the gates of the city. So Eliyahu Navi went to pay a shiva call and said, why would you do this? You saw your children were dying. You knew there was a curse from Yehoshua. Why would you keep doing this? And Achav was there. Achav and Izebel, right? Ahab and Jezebel. Yeah, and he says, don't pay attention to him. You worried about Yehoshua, the student's curse? Worry about Moshe Rabbeinu's curse. He said if you do Avodah Zarah, there won't be any rain. And look, I brought every Avodah Zarah in, and there's plenty of rain. And Eliyahu Navi said, ooh, you mess with the wrong guy. Yeah? Don't think just because we sing a funny little song Saturday night that I'm a guy to be toyed with. And he says to Kadosh Baruch Hu, I want the keys to heaven. He was in that position where he could ask for them, and there was no rain. Now, Baruch Hashem, we've had a lot of rain here in Eretz Yisrael the past couple of years, but when there's a drought, Now how desperate it gets? Now we have some desalination plants, so it's not as desperate, but it used to be you only had the Kinneret. And if it gets too low, then we're afraid that it'll get ruined forever. So you can't pump for it when it reaches the red line. So it went under the red line. What did they do? They drew another red line. This is how we deal with things here. Anyway, there's no water. It can get really desperate, yeah? And there's no rain for 3 years. There's no food. You can't plant anything. You can't water it. The animals are dying. We're in desperate situation. And Eliyahu comes back, and Achav says, you destroyer of Israel. He says, you're the one who brought in the Avodah Zarah. He says, you stop the rain. He goes, okay, let's not do this. Let's have it out. Me and you, tomorrow, Har Carmel, be there. You bring all the priests of Baal, I'll stand alone and represent God. He says, fine. And all the Jewish people gather around, and they get 2 cows. And they say, okay, each one's going to bring one as a korban, and here's the rules, whoever brings down the fire from heaven wins. Got it? Fine. Okay, they each make a little mizbeach, they each bring their cow, and the priests of Baal start chanting. And Eliyahu says, louder, he might be sleeping. So they think, you think he's sleeping? So, okay, louder. The Jewish people are like, does their God sleep? You know? So they're chanting, and he goes, give him time, maybe he's in the bathroom, you know what I mean? And they're like, he goes to the bathroom, you know what I'm saying? Okay, they wait, nothing. They start cutting themselves. Eliyahu says, that's good, do more of that, that's good, you know what I'm saying? Finally comes half the day, at noontime, they sit down exhausted, they couldn't get the fire from heaven. And Eliyahu gets up and he says to the Jewish people, how long are you going to straddle the fence? If God is God, follow God. If Baal is God, follow Baal. But don't be Jews for Baal. He says, God, answer your people. The fire comes down, burns everything up. The Jewish people see this unbelievable miracle. They throw themselves on the ground and say, Hashem Elokim. As you can imagine, this was a really bad time to be a priest for Baal. People were very upset. They killed them all. And he tells Achav, you better get home because it's going to start raining right now. And so he starts running off in his chariot, and it starts raining, and a happy ending. But of course, we know in Jewish history, happy endings usually last about 15 minutes. And so Izebel hears about everything that happened, and she sends the captain of the guard with a message. She says, this time tomorrow, I'll put you to death. As we say in Hebrew, bluffer. You understand? If you could kill me, you would kill me now. You can't kill me because all the Jewish people are on my side. They saw this unbelievable miracle. But that's not what Eliyahu says. He goes out into the desert and lies down. And God says, what are you doing? He says, I want to die. He says, why? He says, the Jewish people have sinned and there's no more hope. He says, okay, Eliyahu, get up. Here's some food. Come with me. Takes him to Har Sinai. Puts him in the little cave where Moshe Rabbeinu was. And there's this big fire. God's not in the fire. And there's a big storm, God's not in the storm. And there's a big noise, God's not in the noise. And then comes a kol damamadaka, a quiet little voice that says, yeah, what do you want, Eliyahu? And Eliyahu says, you people sinned, there's no more hope. But whatever the message was, he obviously didn't get it. What was the message? Izebel sent the message to Eliyahu. He says, that was a great performance. Got to give you credit. The jokes, the fire from heaven was great. I can't touch you now. Everybody's on your side because of this wonderful miracle. You know how long it's going to last? 1 day. And this time tomorrow I'll put you to death and nobody will care because everyone will have forgotten what you did. And he says, she's right. It took me 3 years of famine just to get their attention. I did this unbelievable miracle, and it's true. It made no difference. So Hashem says, come with me. Let me teach you something. You see the big fire, the wind, the storm, that doesn't change people's lives. It's the kol demama daka. It's the small, quiet voice that makes a difference in a person's life. Every one of us has seen miracles, there's no question about it. I remember after 9/11, there was, I think it was Newsweek, at the time, they interviewed various leaders of all around the society. And I remember one of them they interviewed was a Novominsker Rebbe, who was the head of the Agudas Yisrael. And he said, the world will never be the same. 2 months later, I was speaking in a school, and I said, what should I speak about? He goes, don't talk about 9/11, everyone's tired of hearing about it. So the world was a different place, maybe for 2 months, probably less. Yeah? big things don't make an impression on us. Maybe it gets our attention for a day and then we move on in the news cycle. There's only one thing that does it, and that's called constant. Say the Chazal, what's the most important mitzvah, what's the most important pasuk? What is the klal of the Torah? V'ahavti recha kamocha. Yeah? No. The most important one is the pasuk of the korban tamid. Because if you bring the korban every single day, it makes a change. I don't know why the Israel Yeshiva experience works, right? We take a bunch of guys, we lock them in a base medrash, and we sit and study Gemara for a very, very long period of time. Hours and hours. Weeks and weeks, months and months. And yet we know for a fact that everybody's life is touched and changed by that. Where's the big performance? Where's the big show? Kol Dma Medaka. It's a small, daily effort to be able to make a difference. That's the miracle. A guy came from America. He wanted to know if I could set him up with a Mekubal. So I said, I don't really go to Mekubalim, but I can set you up with this person, that person who knows them. So he says to me, don't you like Mekubalim? I said, I don't go to Mekubalim. He says, why? I said, why do you like Mekubalim? Because they're so cool. They tell you all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't know, and things like that. I said, I don't find that cool. You know what I find cool? This guy came to the Chavetz Chaim. It was in the winter. And he had a long trip. He traveled all night and all day. He was exhausted. The Chavetz Chaim looked at him and said, go take a nap. He says, but I'm afraid I'll miss davening. He says, oh, take a nap, I'll wake you up. So the guy wakes up, he looks outside, he sees it's dark. And he goes into the room and he sees the Chavetz Chaim is sitting at the Shabbos table with the candles burning, table set. So he says, Rabbi, I fell asleep. He goes, I didn't have the heart to wake you. Daven and we'll eat. So they daven, he comes in, they sing Shalom Aleichem, Eishes Chayil. He says, where's the Rebbe sitting? He says, she was tired, she went to sleep. Yeah, okay. And they have the Suda, the sing Zmira, say the Torah, however long it was, and he sees that the boy is falling asleep again, so he says, go back to bed. So the boy goes to bed. Chavetz Chaim goes to bed, and he decides he's thirsty. So he goes to get a drink of water, he looks at the clock, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I had to figure Shabbos probably came in at 4 o'clock. The Chavetz Chaim sat there for 10 hours without eating and making Kiddush because he didn't want the boy to be uncomfortable that he was eating alone. That to me is much more powerful than any miracle or thing you're going to see. It's the day-to-day struggles to become a better person that builds Emunah. They write during the Spanish Inquisition, it wasn't all the great philosophers who stood up to the Zionis. It was the simple Jews who struggled every single day to learn Torah and do mitzvos and to be able to get through. That's the strength. Emunah doesn't come from philosophizing. It doesn't come from seeing miracles. It comes from us struggling to become the best Yidden that we can. My friends, you start with a big leg up over everybody else, because anyone who chose to come to Eretz Yisrael this year under these circumstances means that that's the Mesiras Nefesh. And the more that you care, Lefum Tzara Agra, the more effort you put in, then the more you get. And I have no question that everybody who's here today, after this year of experience, are going to turn around and live truly meaningful lives of Torah and Yiras Shamayim. And my bracha to you is that all of Klal Yisrael should benefit from seeing the tremendous accomplishments you go on to make, and just remember, it's us who are going to bring Mashiach. There's nobody else. The people in this room, after all of the effort that you put in, you're in a position to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ask for the Geula, Shleima, and the end of all of our tzaras. And Mitzvah Hashem, we should see it b'karov. Thank you very much.